Welcome to this episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. I'm Eric.
And I'm Angie.
We are married with a ton of kids.
We have 6 kids total. He has 3 and I have 3.
My name's Hallie and I love riding horses.
I'm Lexi and I love agriculture.
My name's Carter and I love eating.
My name's Chase and I love lifting weights.
My name's Summer and I love spending my parents' money.
I'm Dane and I love baseball.
Our show is about our blended, blessed, and always a mess life. And our hope is if you find yourself in the same situation we are in, that by sharing our story, all the fun and all the mess, the challenges we are experiencing, it will give you some inspirations, laughs, and community, knowing you are not alone in this mess.
We appreciate you spending time with us. Let's dive in.
Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess, where we are really excited this week to talk about somebody that in mid-Missouri, people have known for a long time, and that's a young girl named Lizzy Wampler. And her parents are joining us today, John and Jen, and we're just really excited to hear your story. And God's timing is everything, because a couple of weeks ago, we were going to record a podcast, and just due to technical difficulties, we didn't. And that allowed us to air a previous episode from season 1 with Hallie, which has gotten incredible feedback from so many people. And for Angie and I, it was great for our hearts to hear her voice. And so we were blessed about that. But then at the same time, it was around Easter, and we show up at Easter service that morning at the crossing where we go to church. And there on the screen are John and Jen, part of a big video package that they were doing with several families who had lost loved ones. And so they just had this beautiful tribute. And in the video, each family was writing their person's name to honor them and reflect on the hardships. And through it all, they would say, Hallelujah. They still praise Jesus. Sunday is coming. Perfect timing for the fact that we were getting ready to all be together. We didn't really know each other that well. So we were all kind of getting to know each other a little bit better. And it was like God was just orchestrating how this would all come together.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are part of this group that none of us would ever have chosen for our lives, nor could imagine the pain of losing a child. And you can't imagine unless you have gone through it. So first of all, I'm sorry that we are, in this same club, but I'm also grateful that we've crossed paths with each other. I'm sure you guys have experienced that too, but in this grief journey, we have crossed paths with so many beautiful people in the world, and it's people that we maybe would have never crossed paths with before. So just appreciate the time you guys are taking to share Lizzy's story and your story with us.
So with that,
you bet. We're excited to be here.
Welcome. And why don't you guys share with us a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll dive into Lizzy's story.
Okay. Just to give you a little bit of background about both of us. I'm originally from Wisconsin, and I moved to Hawaii when I graduated and lived there for 3 years. And I bring that up because that's where I became a Christian, and it was a really important part of my journey. And after I became a Christian at the age of 19, I wanted to go to Bible school. And so I moved to Fort Worth, Texas. In that same time period, John is originally from Springfield, Missouri. And he was in college and struggled with some drugs and alcohol. And his parents put him in a drug rehab in Arlington, Texas, through a divine intervention that his mom had. So we ended up in Texas at the same time, not knowing each other. And then we ended up at the same church. We went there. We started attending the church at the same year. And we were friends and both became on staff at that church. And then we got married and had 2 of our children in Texas. And then our journey, the church had some, what would you say? It was a very hard time. It was a controlling church, and there's just some situations.
There was some spiritual
abuse. It was back in the day where that wasn't really discussed. And so we left in a very hurtful manner. We had been there for 11 years on staff, and we didn't know what to do. And
we weren't allowed to tell our parents, tell our friends, and it was all hush hush and just.
It was devastating.
Yeah, it was hard.
Because we had such wonderful experiences as a new Christian at this church, and we both served there and had, single friends, then young married friends, and then having our children together with our friends.
And so give our lives to it.
Yeah. And so we didn't know what to do. And we were so young. We didn't know we could still live in Fort Worth. We didn't have to leave, but we felt like our only option was to draw closer to family, and his family was in Springfield. And so we moved to Springfield, and that was a very dark time for both of us, and lots of depression. It was just very dark season, but that's where I became pregnant with Lizzy.
Mm.
And so Lizzy was our third child. So we had Hannah, Daniel, and Lizzy. And she immediately brought us joy when she was born in that really dark season.
Mm-hmm.
And around the time she was born, John got an opportunity to move here into Columbia with the food bank. And he worked at the food bank for over 5 years or so. So we raised our children here. And then at the tender age of 9, Lizzy developed some leg cramps, and which I thought were just leg cramps at that time. And we came to find out the devastating news that she was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, a very type of rare bone cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And she was diagnosed, we found the diagnosis the day of Thanksgiving in 2016. And our lives at that point drastically changed. And you can step in anytime.
Man, I want to go back to Springfield. Just that was, we were there for about maybe, I don't know what, 3 years, something like that. And I did just a bunch of odd jobs. Mm-hmm. And it was just a hard season for me. It was a hard season for Jen because we left, all of our friends that we're so close to for so many years. And, I was stuck in a cubicle working at hotels.com, booking hotel reservations. Yeah. And, if you know me, dude, I'm not a cubicle type of guy. There's nothing wrong with working in cubicles, but,
no.
I love getting out and about and talking to people and hustling. And
we had ministry with that. That was our hearts.
Yeah.
Was to just be in ministry. And so it was, all of it was devastating.
Yeah. But just that depressing, dark, really tough season. And then, it's just, I don't know if it's ironic or what the word is, but just, and then that's when we had Lizzy, and her middle name was Joy. Yeah. And Jen cried tears of joy. Maybe I did too. I know you did. When she was born, and she brought so much joy.
And I will say this, when I had Lizzy, like after every delivery, like with Hannah and Daniel, I always knew there was another one coming. Like, as a pregnant woman, you're not really looking towards, becoming pregnant again. But I just didn't feel like, as happy as I was with Hannah and Daniel, I just knew there's more and there's going to be one more. But with Lizzy, the only way I can explain it is I felt like it was a crescendo. I felt like it was just like the end of an orchestra, a symphony, just I felt so elated, like our family is now complete. And she did. She came in and she was just, I felt like she was just like this little doll. When I would dress her up and put her in the car seat, she was just a very easy, fun baby. And if you've had many children, when you have an easy, fun baby, they're so
soak it up.
It's lovely. Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry, I jumped in.
No, but Lizzy just started complaining of the growing pains. Mm-hmm. And she was just a normal 9-year-old little girl. Yeah. Dude, she loved jump ropes and slime and, sleepovers. And she was a firecracker. Mm-hmm. She was a party waiting to happen. She was just like her dad. We had a blast.
Yeah.
So much fun. And then, we started to get a bunch of tests and they started to get more serious. And at the very beginning, we were like, oh, this is nothing. It's, a sprain, whatever, because the other kids complained of growing pains too, when they were younger.
Yeah. I had taken Hannah when she was in 4th grade. So it was the same grade that Lizzy was when she started complaining. But I had taken Hannah in 4th grade. She was complaining of leg pains and took her to the orthopedic doctor, had x-rays done, and there was nothing wrong with her leg. So I just assumed when it was Lizzy would only complain at night when she was going to bed. And I always thought it was kind of like that extra mom time. She was just wanting that extra attention. So she'd be like, oh, I feel like my bone is growing. And so we didn't, it was just a very unique experience because also she was my last child in elementary school. And I remember really setting aside my schedule because I was like, I'm not going to miss any parties this year. I'm going to soak in this year particularly with Lizzy, because I had 2 other kids that had already been going now to middle school. It was Hannah's first year in high school. And I just wanted to soak everything up. So the diagnosis came and it was just so devastating. And that was really when the beginning of our journey of grief started, because I think I can honestly say when they told us she had cancer, that was the beginning of grief for both of us.
Right. Even the possibility. And then when we found out the day before Thanksgiving of 2016, the final diagnosis from the biopsy, that was a Wednesday. Okay. Thanksgiving was Thursday. On Monday, I believe they wanted to start chemo. And that's when I think we called several places, whatever. And one of the places was St. Jude. And they were like, dude, don't start any chemo. Just come straight here, because they have their own protocol. But I mean, our world literally was turned upside down. I mean, I'm a huge Dallas Cowboy fan.
Sorry.
I know, man. I know what it's like to be disappointed and stuff. But I mean, the Cowboys play every Thanksgiving. It is massive. It's like a Christmas in our house. I mean, it's huge. And I remember during the Cowboys game, we were all sitting on the couch and a St. Jude commercial comes on. And dude, we are frozen. We're just sitting there like, oh my gosh. And usually commercial comes on during the game. Dude, we're getting food, we're getting pie, going to the bathroom, laundry, whatever. But you know, I mean, that was just, we experienced every emotion under the sun.
And I will say with her diagnosis too, what made it so impactful was the type of cancer that they believed that she had. When they called us in, you have to understand, we again went from just thinking it was leg cramps to maybe she fell and sprained her leg all in the same week. And now we're looking at this diagnosis of osteosarcoma. They said, we will have to amputate your daughter's leg. And she's 9 years old. And
that was another blow. We're
just trying to wrap our mind around everything. And so that's when our family was encouraging us to seek other hospitals, just make sure, where do you want her treated? And the reason why we most likely we did choose St. Jude was because they had something that could offer a limb sparing surgery for her. And that's all they treated were children with pediatric cancer. So we felt like if she were to be accepted, that felt like the best place for her to be. And we weren't really thinking long term, like, well, what is this going to look like for our family? We're here in Columbia, Missouri. St. Jude is in Memphis, Tennessee. That's 6 hours away. We didn't understand how that would look and how long the treatment could potentially be.
Right.
But anyhow,
no, that's good. Decision. And then we had a friend, Sam Hamra, who was on the board of St. Jude, and Sam Hamra owns, I don't know how many Wendy's and Paneras, and he's out of Springfield. And I grew up playing tennis with him, and we're family friends. And like the Wendy's here and the Paneras here, they're Hamra Enterprises, and they're huge sponsors of our Lizzy's Walk of Faith 5K walk run. That's in October. Nice little plug there. And
love it.
Come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sam Hammer, dude, he was one of the guys that got us in, that helped us. And
I will say St. Jude won't ever turn away they won't ever turn away a child because of finances. So the only reason why they would ever turn away a child would be, well, they can't treat all the children in the United States for pediatric cancer, unfortunately. However, they will, if your child has not had anything done, like no protocol, no port put in, anything like that, because they want to start and finish everything. It's a research hospital. So that, again, Lizzy hadn't done anything, but remember, she was diagnosed Thursday and they wanted us to start chemo Monday. So we had to make a decision quickly. And St. Jude answered his phone call on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And
I was just like, I cannot believe, I told him, I'm like, I cannot believe that you answered the phone, that we're talking on Thanksgiving. And the lady was so sweet, so nice. She was like, listen, cancer does not know any holiday. And we are here for you. And I know we need to go on to more questions, but long story short, for the next 15 months, my wife and I, every 2 weeks, traveled back and forth, taking care of Lizzy in Memphis. She was a full-time nurse, taking care of Lizzy for 2 weeks. I was here at home, went from full-time to part-time, lost my benefits. My wife lost her job. taking care of our 2 kids here, working part-time. I remember pulling into Hy-Vee parking lot and just having a panic attack, thinking about breakfast, lunch, dinner, all the activities and everything that I had to do for 2 weeks. But I mean, and so that was 15 months. And then, tragically, Lizzy lost her battle March of 2018. We were sent home to be with hospice. And I know we're just missing a lot here, but short version is this is just, we're sent home and that was very, very traumatic, slowly watching your daughter take her last breath. But I remember her sitting up on the edge of the bed. She was with Jennifer, and feel free to jump in anytime. And I was in the other room. They both were sitting up on the edge of the bed, Lizzy's oxygen machine on full blast. And she had the body of a Tinkerbell, but the spirit of Samson, and just a little bitty body. And she said, I want my last wish to donate my body for research because I don't want any child to go through what I went through. I don't want any father to hear what my daddy heard on the phone, is that there's nothing more I can do for your child. Mm-hmm. And so as we speak right now, her tumors are all over the world being researched. And, my phone is just sitting right over there. I mean, imagine getting a phone call from a lab or, a hospital, a research facility in Europe or South Africa saying, hey, we found the missing link of your daughter's cancer. And so.
And I will say, and then we can wrap it up for your next question.
Yeah, we're light.
We have a long story and obviously we treasure is it okay that the light went off?
Oh yeah,
okay, perfect.
So good.
We treasure every moment with
Honey,
Lizzy.
Your beauty and just everything about you. We don't need extra light.
That's what reminds, when I listen to Aric and how he admires you, Angie, I'm married to that as well. And it's a blessing.
Yes.
Thank you. It is a blessing. It's a
little embarrassing at
Dude,
times.
I can't even get her flowers for Mother's Day.
Well, that's another topic.
See, we are alike because it is a little, I think maybe that's what it is. It's kind of embarrassing when it's like public.
It's just,
yeah.
So it's been like, our listeners don't want to hear you talk about it.
They do.
I think they do.
I think they do.
Yeah.
They do. But I can empathize with Angie totally. Yeah. But in this journey with Lizzy, I think our eyes were open to a world that we didn't know existed. So I had known people go through cancer. Obviously we have friends that go through cancer, but when you actually watch your child, so from the moment that she started complaining about those leg pains, her pain never went away. It only escalated. It only got worse. So you're talking about 2 parents now watching their child suffer for 15 months. Unending. There may be a day that was a little bit easy, but she was on so much pain medication. She had so many surgeries, over 8 surgeries, nerve pain. She had 5 or 6 inches of her femur removed and a titanium rod put in her leg. She had to learn how to walk 2 times. Strenuous PT, to learn how to walk again, all the while doing chemo and all the effects of that. But then not only are you watching this with your child and wondering, how is this happening in 2016 and 2017? Is there not a better way to treat cancer? And then to come to find out that the medication they gave our daughter has not changed or advanced in 40 years. And so,
seriously,
that was hard to understand as well. And to understand that we were now in a hospital with hundreds of other families going through the same journey with us. And it was a life-changing experience.
It was like walking into a war zone.
It really was.
As awesome as St. Jude is.
Yes. But it's a hospital filled with sick kids. And you're walking through the halls with your daughter in crutches or in a wheelchair at the age of 9, who puts their child in a wheelchair. She had hearing aids. She had lost her hearing from the chemo.
Her beautiful blonde hair.
Sometimes I felt like I had a little old grandma with me. We would laugh about it, but she has her hearing aids, her crutches, bald head. But you see a hospital filled with sick kids like this and missing limbs. And then you start to get to know these families and you meet them in the waiting rooms and you see their faces because you're in there the entire time. Every single day you're at St. Jude for something. For 15 months, sometimes you'd have maybe 3 appointments. Sometimes you'd have 8 or 9. And so you get to know these families, and then you start to know these families, and then you know that the kids aren't going to make it. There's kids, I had never known a family that lost a child. And so Lizzy was in this world as well. And so her first appointment with a therapist at St. Jude, they provide a psychologist and a psychiatrist for the patients. And the first question they asked Lizzy was, what was the question they asked
What
her?
is the one thing that bothers you?
Here,
Yeah.
yes. What's the hardest thing that you experienced since you were diagnosed? So we thought she would say, well, being taken away from my family, missing my brothers and sisters, not getting to go to school. I mean, she had a lot of things, being in pain. And what she said that was the hardest thing for her was seeing all these other sick children.
She had such a compassion
What a gift.
and such a, she was always concerned about the other person.
Okay, we've talked enough. So what's your next question?
We've
I was
20
gonna,
minutes later here.
No, I was just going to say, as far as that goes, one, I remember, when you guys were going through everything in real time, the crossing multiple weekends, we would be brought up in church during that time, and just knowing you guys from afar, just seeing the strength from a distance and how much the church loved your family and Lizzy and that journey. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that we're all here today, all these years later. I also, for the first time, realized how behind we are in pediatric cancer research when our mutual friends, the Luce family, whose daughter Ryan was diagnosed with cancer several years ago, and she's had obviously a much better outcome than our families, which is fantastic. They really, I emceed an event for Brad and Jen several years ago when they were raising money for all of this. And it was just amazing to me, all this money into research for the older adults, but we're not putting the money into our future, our kids that actually we need to be, working on. So you say for 40 years that the treatment was the same. I'm just, unfortunately, now I'm not surprised.
I don't know a lot about it, but I do know trials are one of the reasons as well. I mean, obviously, it's harder to do experiments with children, right? Because it's easier to do trial runs on adults. And so I think that is part of the problem as well for the advancement. But I just know with osteosarcoma, it is rare, but is very aggressive. And for example, for Lizzy, when she was first diagnosed, I mean, immediately I was Googling, well, what is her, chances of survival? Well, it was localized. So it was only in one place. It was in her femur and it hadn't spread. So her survival rate at that point was about 70%. But then at the end of her first protocol, which was 8 months, we're going to do her no more chemo party. We're very excited. I already bought her some school clothes so she could go back.
She was cancer free.
She was cancer free up until that point. And we were so excited. They just wanted to
just got to come home, go to school. I mean, it was a big deal.
We had already packed up the Target house. We were staying at the Target house. So Target supplies housing for children at St. Jude and their families, which is amazing. And we were staying there. So we had packed up everything. He had already picked up a load of everything and brought it back here to Columbia. I had all the children with me. We were going to do her no more chemo party. And St. Jude, we had a relationship with ALSAC. They're the company that raises money for St. Jude. And Lizzy had volunteered to do several commercials for them. And they wanted to do a no more chemo party for her. They did last set of scans. And I got a call from her oncologist, Dr. Bishop. And he said, I think I see something. And her left hip had lit up in the PET scan.
They could move from one side to the other. And I remember asking Dr. Bishop, I'm like, what do we tell Lizzy? What do we do? And he was just like, we just need to be brave like Lizzy. And that diagnosis right there was almost as worse as the first.
It was.
I mean, it just took the air out. And anyway.
One thing you said, Jen, that just resonates with me so much, that I think people just cannot imagine the depth of pain when you bring this life into the world and you're there when your child takes their first breath and then being there when they take their last breath. Like that is the most traumatic, deepest pain I think anyone could ever experience. And then there's times I'm also grateful that I was able to be there as well. I'm sure you've probably thought that too. And there's so many different scenarios where parents don't get that opportunity to be there and walk them into, the arms of Jesus. And I replay that so much in my mind of laying there, being, just right next to Hallie, just hearing her breath. How do you guys get through that? Like, how do you, and you mentioned too, like the grief started the day you found out. And I'm sure that's a reflection, of looking back of like, oh, this is when the grief started. Because in the moment, it's like this, fight or flight. Like, what do we got to do? Let's go. Let's figure this out. But in so much shock, I relate it to when I got the call that something happened to Hallie. It's just this instant moment that just changes the complete direction of your life. As you guys look back and reflect, like, what's that hard fought hallelujah? Like, when you look back, how did you get through it? Because I think a lot of our listeners are on some sort of grief journey, some sort of difficult road to navigate. And grief obviously looks different for a lot of people. But as you reflect, like, how did you get through it? What kept you guys going and still fighting forward?
Well, that's why I brought up about Hawaii. For me, I think we had such a foundation. That's where I became a Christian. John had a pretty impactful conversion, when he became a Christian in the drug rehab in Arlington, Texas. And our time at that church that I had mentioned was phenomenal in building a foundation in our relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe we made it through this traumatic situation because of that foundation in God. Because through the entire journey, I had to rely on my experience with God previously. Even though we had gone through hardships, I couldn't deny that. But he brought me out of those hardships. I remember the grief from leaving the church and how I felt like we literally had divorced a lot of our friends and we could have no contact with them. And it was just so traumatic for us. But I remember how he did heal my heart eventually. And so from the beginning of her diagnosis to the very end, I felt like for myself, and I want you to share too, because I think it would be helpful, but I felt like I just had to go back to that foundation of God is good and he will continue to be good. And I really honestly clung to that scripture, that those that mourn, he will comfort those that mourn. And going through her time of when I had to finally, we had asked Lizzy to be brave from the moment she was diagnosed. We had to ask her to be brave to leave her family. We had to ask her to be brave to leave her friends and school and to go to, St. Jude. We had to ask her to be brave for every surgery, every chemo, every shot, all these things. And I remember at the end of the journey, I finally had to ask her to she can stop fighting. And we just basically had to prepare her to die and explain to her about heaven, which she understood, but it was such a holy time. I guess to answer your question, for me, I felt like it was a honor and a very holy time to walk her to that. But I do want you to share your.
I think one turning point for me, there's several of them, but Dave Cover was speaking and I was sitting in the back of the sanctuary back at the church. And I usually sit on the second row. Mm-hmm. And I just love sitting up close. But for some reason, I was sitting in the back. It was at the end of Lizzy's journey, end of her life. And he talked about how when he basically cried out, Lord, not my will, but your will be done. And that is, if you think about that, that's when it just a light went on with me. And it was like, that's when I learned how to really, really trust. And that's when I gave God literally Liz. I was like, God, here is Lizzy. I give her to you. See, I had her so close and I was praying for her, fighting for her, praying healing scriptures for her, warring in the spirit, all that stuff. And I just to be able to just say, Lord, not my will, but your will be done, brought so much peace and so much relief and so much just like, okay, God, she's now yours. And I know I could have done a better job explaining that, but I mean, that was huge for me because, And that's, again, one of the hardest prayers for a father to pray. But as far as like just with grief, I mean, it's just like, you know what it's like. I mean, we're grieving every single day. Our grief has not ended. I mean, yesterday I was at G&D Steakhouse and I ordered a steak, baked potato loaded, salad, got a water. The food was right there in front of me. And then I'm on my phone and doing a Facebook post, and it was Lizzy's birthday. And I was like, okay, what am I going to say? I knew the pictures to post, but I was like, okay, what am I going to say? And then immediately I was thinking, okay, happy birthday, sweet Lizzy, whatever. And dude, I just lost it. Just a wave just hit me and I just lost it. And I had to put my head down. I was crying uncontrollably. My food got cold and I just put my head down, hoping nobody would come up to me and say, are you okay? Thankfully, everybody left me alone. That's happened to me in the aisle at Target. That's happened to me. It happened to me at G&D yesterday. So allowing it to come in waves and not suppressing it, not stopping it, that has helped me so many times. And that's, I mean,
I'm going to go slightly off script for just a second, but only because you brought up Dave Cover and what he said that day. And probably going on 2 years ago now, we were probably a little over a year into this grief journey. Dave sat there at the table that you guys are at, did a podcast with us, which is still one of my favorite podcasts that we've ever done, if you haven't listened to that. And as a grieving mother, Angie just said, I just want to see Hallie so bad. Like, I just want to get to heaven and run to her. And what Dave said to me that has just stuck with me is, Angie, I think that where you're trying to go is that eventually you're going to see, if the scripture is right, when we pass, it's Jesus we're going to see first. And it's like, oh, Hallie, it's great to see you here. But Jesus is going to be so magnificent and enormous that's going to be where our heart goes. Doesn't mean that we love Hallie any less. She's already experiencing this joy with Jesus that is really what we're longing for. And Dave said that at the table. And that just really, kind of like you said, he talked about that, stuck with you. That stuck with me so much.
I still can't, my mind doesn't, I dream of going and seeing her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I can't imagine getting to heaven and being like, oh, it's Jesus, and not really. It's great to see how I just can't, because you just forever ache to see your child again.
Yeah. And that wave of grief that hit me at G&D, I felt her presence so strong. So strong.
That was my next question for you guys.
Oh my gosh.
We were headed. So perfect. It's all
dude.
working.
It's what's the relationship like with her now? Because I feel like I still have a strong relationship with Hallie. So that's my question. Share some of that with us.
We do a lot of speaking, and obviously we've written a book, and that's kind of our way of just, our way of telling her story and sharing her story and not being ashamed and not feeling like we are talking too much about her, but to have the freedom and the vulnerability and being authentic and transparent to be able to help. It helps. It brings healing. And so that's why we knew that when Lizzy passed and we started, we wanted to, for the 5K, we knew that we couldn't crawl in a bottle and put the blinds down, shut the door, crawl in a hole. We had to tell her story. We had to spread awareness about pediatric cancer and what that world is like. And so we knew our job wasn't done, and that brings so much healing. Mm-hmm. But, when Lizzy passed in March of 2018, I remember April for Easter, I was in the aisle of Target and I wanted to get an Easter basket for Lizzy, for her marker, for her grave. And I remember literally crying uncontrollably because I did not know what kind of candy she wanted. I was just like, what? And I just felt her presence so strong. And I mean, what about you, honey? I mean,
So I had a couple of, when she first passed away, experiences with Lizzy, I think that God just allowed me to have. And I think my relationship with her right now is she's still a little child to me. She would, if she had not passed away, she would be 18. However, my mind can't see her as that. I just forever, and I just truly believe when I see her in heaven, Angie, I do believe she's still going to be my 10-year-old little girl, because I think time is so different in heaven. I mean, whatever age she is in heaven, I'll be thrilled to see her, of course. But in my relationship with her, I still view her as a tender little girl. But when she passed away and we had her funeral and everything had been done, I remember laying in bed and I was about to go to sleep. And then all of a sudden I felt this love, and it wasn't God's love. I knew it was Lizzy's love, because as a mom, when you're hugging your kids, you can sense the love they have for you. And going through this journey with Lizzy, there'd be times when I'd have to leave her for 2 weeks. So Angie, if you can imagine taking care of Hallie, and she's going through the worst thing that she's ever gone through in her life, or she has a surgery coming up and she's scared, but you have to leave her because you can't forget your other 2 children, right? That's like a whole nother topic of how do your siblings deal with all of this going on? And so I knew what her love and her hugs felt like when I would leave during those times, and I could sense her love. So I was laying in bed. It was after her funeral, and I felt this overwhelming love, and I knew it was Lizzy, and I heard her voice. And she was breathlessly running around. In my, vision of her was running around breathlessly saying, "Mommy, I'm so, so happy. Mommy, I'm so, so happy. Mommy, I'm so, so happy. I'm just so, so happy." It's like I knew that she was okay. And after seeing her suffer for 15 months, that was the best gift I could ever ask from God, was knowing that she's okay. And so for me, when we get to do what we get to do and we help people, that's when I sense her the most, because I think she would be fine if we never did anything for pediatric cancer, because it's a lot of work what we do. But I think she's very happy, because that was the first thing she noticed too, was not just her situation, but these other sick children. And we get to still help them. And that brings healing. That's pretty much my relationship with her, is helping others.
Yeah.
And her smile and her chuckle, her laugh, her giggle is just, so many people ask us, John and Jen, what would Lizzy say? What would Lizzy say or do when, knowing what you guys have done for her? Like last year, for Lizzy's 7th annual Walk of Faith, we had 1,500 people show up at Bethel Park.
Awesome.
We had princesses, superheroes, fire jugglers. Casey Wolf was there. I mean, all this entertainment, because it's geared after Lizzy. The event is just a party, a fun, entertaining time. And, we've given well over $760,000 to families going through pediatric cancer, so they can solely focus on their kiddo. And then also with research, Children's Mercy, Mizzou Hospital, St. Jude, the Osteosarcoma Institute in Dallas. I mean, we have done so much. But again, Lizzy would be giggling. I could see her just like, I cannot believe you're doing this for me.
Yeah.
But I mean,
when I talk to other parents that have lost kids, we all have a very similar vision of like our kids in heaven gathered around looking, hey, that's my mom and dad over there.
Totally.
And you feel that, like you feel that they're like proud of the fight, because every day is a fight forward. And it looks different for everybody, but it does take an extreme amount of strength and faith to fight forward, as hard as you guys are, and raising all this money and doing all of these things to honor Lizzy. It's
I want to commend.
Baby, I call it.
I want to commend you guys for what you do. We've obviously listened to a bunch of podcasts, and I listened to the podcast with Hallie. And I wish I would have known her. And it just brings such a smile, on my face. But the fact that you guys, have the courage, have the dedication and the perseverance to keep you're moving forward. You're not moving on, but you're moving forward, and you're helping other families to move forward as well. And so,
I did want to say, we could not do what we've done without the support from our board. So all of our board member, and I'm just saying that because it's the real thing. They have been with us from the beginning. And I think the reason why they're so special is they knew Lizzy. They saw her journey up front. And we are just so grateful for them for their guidance, for their wisdom, for their support. I mean, after every race, I'm like, did we burn them out? Are they going to come back? Are they going to do this again?
Because we start planning in January.
Yes.
Technically, I do it in December, but we start in January and the event is either in September or October. So, dude, it's like having a baby. I mean, it's
a long process.
It's a long time. So I just wanted to acknowledge the support, and the support of, obviously, Columbia is a very generous community. The Crossing has been there from the beginning. And I want to just say, to touch on the story of what we experienced with the negative impact of the previous relationship we had with the church, and being on staff and leadership at that church for 11 years, and to be treated the way and shunned the way that we had been, to come into a church like the Crossing. We were only there for not even 6 months when Lizzy was diagnosed. And they embraced us. Like, we never took the new members class. We just assumed we were new members.
Yeah. We just acted like we were members, man.
Just acted like we were members. And I remember they gave us a check for $5,000. And again, I lost my job, not because my job didn't want to keep me. I was working for the City of Refuge for Jen Wheeler, and she wanted me to work there, but I would be in St. Jude of the hospital. I couldn't get any cell service, and I wasn't doing her a good job. So I had to quit. But they gave us a check for $5,000.
No other church did that.
No.
I was blown away. I took the call from Shay Roush. I was in the parking lot of Chipotle off of Stadium. And I remember exactly where I was because I was so stunned.
Right. Like, what do you mean you want to give to us? We haven't served enough. What do you?
We haven't done enough.
We haven't proven ourselves yet.
I don't even know if I've met the guy.
I know. And so
he's all right.
He's all right. Okay. Yeah.
But they're
just.
I'll have to reach out to you guys about that new members class, though. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't tell
we'll
them.
get you guys through that. Don't you worry.
It was such a healthy church for us to go to. It was like a hospital, and then for them to be like the first people to say, hey, we're going to get behind you. We're going to support you. We got your back. We're here for you. They sent Rachel, what's her? Oh, gosh. They sent somebody that was on staff to go to Memphis. Yeah. Well, Rachel Schizler. To do a video story of Lizzy. And they showed it at the Crossing a long time ago.
So now that's a memory that we have forever.
Yeah, just really left such an impression. And so anyway, there's so much more to say, but you guys, we don't want to get off script or anything. And
what Angie and I have realized over the last 2.5 years is that not only have our grief journeys looked incredibly different, but every family that goes through this has a different grief journey. But what are some things physically, mentally, spiritually that you have learned through your grief journey that you might be able to share with other families
that maybe are just starting to embark on some journey? Like 3 things that they've got to focus on. We have people reach out to us often of like, oh my, I'm just starting to experience this. Like, how'd you get through it? And I know we talked about faith. Obviously, foundation, that's so relatable to me. I'm the same way. I'm so grateful that I leaned into my faith when Aric and I met, because I wouldn't be here if I didn't have that foundation. But were there other things that you guys kind of did, or advice that you would give to people outside of your faith, keeping that strong?
Yeah. And going back to the faith, just because we had a strong foundation and just because we knew all the right scriptures and everything and the right prayers, it didn't mean everything was sunshine, rainbows, kitty cats, and puppy dogs. I mean, even to this day, even now, when I read Psalm 91, it's a powerful chapter, powerful scriptures and truths. I struggle, man, with several things. But anyway.
Because Lizzy meditated on that scripture.
Right. Yeah.
To see harm come to her and to not see the healing come will always be something that we have to just, wrestle with.
Right. But as far as like practical, like our grief and just how we're handling stuff like it's different for every person. And you guys know that, and we know that. But
For me,
You know,
I'll and jump in. I'm not trying to.
no, go ahead.
So what was a blessing for me is, like I said, I had lost my job. And so when Lizzy passed away, I had been her caregiver for 15 months. John, thankfully with friends and family, financially, I was able to not work for 3 months. And I literally cried almost every day. For me, that helped me. I think that helped. Not everybody's going to have that ability. I mean, he went back to work and you can't obviously go back to work and start crying, but really just being real with my emotions. We did have the outlet of our Facebook page and I would just journal and I would just let that out. So that was a practical thing that helped me through that, going through photos. I know there was something I wanted to help with people because it is hard when you see a loved one on hospice and all those. So I really want to say the right thing for them, that when they're watching their child on hospice. What would you jump in and say about that?
I do think
Gosh,
sitting
just
in it,
whether it's
sitting is
hospice or been, even if they've lost a child, find something that works for you. For me, journaling is huge. At our bank, we have now 3 safe deposit boxes because one is not enough. I mean, I have probably 10 to 15 journals that are filled up that Lizzy has written in, even during her journey. And during her journey in the hospital, pictures, coloring and notes and love letters to me and all of our kids, not just Lizzy, but all of our kids.
We don't have any jewels in those safe deposit
Yeah,
boxes.
no jewels, no
just
gold,
journals.
just they're all journals. And sometimes I'll just sit in the bank and read the journals and just cry and weep and grieve and just relive the moments. And so for me, journaling, gosh, I've got a group of men that I meet with. We try to meet once a month. It's called Just for Dads. And it's for fathers that have gone through the traumatic loss of their kids.
Oh, wow.
So for some fathers, it's drowning, car accidents, sickness, cancer, on and on. And to be able to be in a group of men that, it's not natural for men to open up, to be authentic, to be transparent, to be vulnerable. But when you get a bunch of men in a group that can open up and weep and cry and just be real, I mean, that is so powerful. Society, I believe, looks at that and sees that as a sign of weakness. I believe that's a sign of strength. I believe that is what you need to fight that battle head on. And so, that's one small thing. And I mean, there's so many others.
One other thing that I wanted to say that helped me, and I know this might not apply for everyone, but so when Lizzy passed away, I had previously been a runner, had done some half marathons. And I did sign up for the St. Jude half marathon because we had experienced that when she was a patient there. And so I started training, she passed away in March and I started training probably in April, and the marathon is in December. And that was very therapeutic for me. And then to go back to the place where she was and see other children, going through cancer and she was gone, and seeing some of the families that we had gone through that journey with together was very healing. But the first time we started giving to families going through what we're going through, and I had to find my place, because when people have a child diagnosed with cancer, I might not necessarily be the first person they need to be introduced to, right? Because when your child's diagnosed with cancer, you need to have tunnel vision and you want to see all the survivors that you can. And I respect that, because I was the same way with Lizzy. I didn't want to meet any other parent that had lost a child to osteosarcoma when my child's battling osteosarcoma. I wanted to meet the survivors. So we've had to find our place when we do meet these families, but that has been a tremendous source of healing, is being able to be there for a mom who knows that their child, unfortunately, the diagnosis has taken a turn. Their child most likely is not going to survive. And that's the place where I feel like I can truly help people. So that has been helpful for me in my grief. So I would just encourage your listeners, for whatever traumatic situation they're going through, there will be a time where maybe you can give back and you'll be stronger, and you don't have to be perfectly put together at that
Right,
point.
right. That's good.
You have something to give. Your story has value. There's someone that will really glean from your story. And you may think, well, it's a very broken story. It doesn't matter. I think it can really connect with people. And I think that has been a tremendous help for our sanity and our marriage and everything, is to be on this journey together and communicate together while we're.
And honey, if you think about Lizzy, as difficult as her journey was, while she was receiving treatment, her life did not stop just because of a difficult season. She lived her life to the fullest. There's just so many stories of her reaching out to people kind of like on the low end of the totem pole, if you will. People that were cleaning floors, people that were cleaning toilets, that would come in her room while she's receiving treatment, chemotherapy, and just she would reach out to them. She would ask questions to them. She would show interest in them. And they would come to us and with tears in their eyes and said, man, I've been here 7 or 8 years and I've never had anybody show interest or ask about me, because, they're kind of invisible. They go in, clean the porta potty and leave. They're not like some big daddy NP doctor, whatever. Lizzy, she just refused to let cancer define her. She lived her life to the fullest. And just because she was going through a difficult season, she never, I'm getting a tap from my wife here.
Oh, no, then we need to wrap it up. I know he's my preacher.
Yeah. Don't you think like that's the story? Like that's
right.
The ask of us. It's exactly how you define Lizzy, is the ask of us parents, is like not letting an extreme loss define like how you're going to fight forward. I feel the exact same thing of going through this. It's like, okay, this is the full circle moment of we got to be brave and fight forward and not let that totally define how we live.
I'm going to read something I read earlier this week, because I know we have a lot of listeners that have lost children that are grieving. I want to say, I almost said earlier, it's very possible that the girls are actually watching us this morning. Like, well, there's our parents at it again. Look at them. And so it makes my heart happy to think that perhaps Hallie and Lizzy are sitting together watching. But I read a book this week, and I don't read books very quickly usually, but this one just sucked me in a couple of days it was over. And it was called The Stranger in the Lifeboat by Mitch Albom. And it's, as you get through the book, you start to realize it's about loss. And there's a page towards the end where God is talking to one of the main characters and says, I'll paraphrase here, but God says to the person, when someone passes, people always ask, why did God take them? But a better question would be, why did God give them to us? What did we do to deserve their love, their joy, the sweet moments that we shared? Didn't we have such moments with those people? Those moments are a gift, but their end is not a punishment. I am never cruel. I know you before you were born. I know you after you die. My plans for you are not defined by this world. Beginnings and endings are an earthly idea. I go on, and because I go on, you go on with me. Feeling loss is just part of why you're on earth. I thought that was a beautiful part in the book that gave me some comfort thinking about Hallie this week.
Yes.
We always wrap saying something we're grateful for. And then after we do that, we'll just ask real quick for you guys to tell everybody how to get the book and sign up for the 5K. But first and foremost, anything that you guys who wants to go first with something they're grateful for today? It could be any of us.
Oh, I'll jump in. Like, I am always grateful to cross paths with beautiful souls, and meeting you guys today just confirms that. Like, just the energy and having this conversation is why we're all here. And I did get up early and go for a walk this morning, so I was proud of myself. I'm grateful.
Jen, I know you've got one, and I'm just, dude, it's about Daniel.
Oh, I don't know if you wanted me to share this, but I'll share it briefly encrypted, because he works at a bank in Fort Worth, and he called us last night to tell us about this testimony. And basically, he's a teller at a bank, and this older lady came in, and he felt like there was something. She was asking for a withdrawal of a lot of money, but she seemed uncertain, and he kind of had a check in his spirit about it. But he, as a teller, he can't really direct her on what she's going to spend her money on. So she got a cashier's check, and she said it was for an investment. And without going into detail, she had been scammed and was asked to do a withdrawal of a lot of money. It was most of her money. And, but again, he can't give her advice, but he just knew something wasn't right with the situation. She came back the next day and said, I did UPS, I overnighted it, but this is what really happened. I clicked on a link and it wasn't what they scammed me out of money. And so she's like, I don't know what to do. And so he called his manager and he's like, there's not much you can do, but you can maybe call UPS and ask them to avert the delivery. And so Daniel took the time and helped her with that. And they were able to avert the delivery. And she looked at Daniel and she said, I prayed today that God would give me an angel. And, I believe that was just a small way that God was using Daniel to kind of build his confidence in hearing his voice and helping that lady, because he knew that there was a wrong situation. And I kept telling him, that's the Holy Spirit working in you. And, when your kids are, he's 21, he just turned 21, but he's developing his own walk with the Lord. And I believe that built his confidence to see that God can use you. Listen to that inward voice, right? And so if you feel something's wrong in your spirit. And so for me, I'm thankful that my children can hear from God, and I'm also thankful that my daughter is coming tomorrow for Mother's Day from Springfield. So I'm excited to see my daughter.
Yes. I'm grateful for my kids. I'm so thankful for Daniel and Hannah. Yes, we miss Lizzy. And yes, we talk a lot about her and write a book and have huge events. And maybe our kids are sick and tired of
They're not. Our kids aren't. In the beginning, I think it was harder for them to understand. But now they're very grateful that we have the foundation so that they can express their feelings and they know that this is all for good.
Yeah.
And so,
but I felt like at the beginning, God was just like, you know what? You've got two other wonderful children that you can pour your life into. And I know it's easy to say now, but I mean, it's true. And so anyway,
that's great. We're grateful.
Yeah.
I'd say lastly, I'm grateful for the Crossing. What a wonderful church it's been for all of us and many families across Missouri, and how it shows up for everyone in need, and the friendships it has brought to all of us and bringing us together, and we're just wonderful people there. And so if you are listening and you're mourning, you're hurting, and you think maybe Jesus could be an answer for you, I would tell you that he is. And I tell you that if you're looking for a church, that the Crossing would love to welcome you as well. So
that's good.
Plug for the Crossing. They never ask for it. They probably don't even listen, but just we talk about them a lot on here.
Yes.
All right. Before we wrap today, obviously you guys have the Walk of Faith. You have the new book. You just let people know how that they could participate with those things.
So the book is on Amazon. It's Lizzy's Walk of Faith. If you just type it in on Amazon, you can get it quickly. If you're here in town,
the foreword was written by Joanna Gaines from the Fixer Uppers.
Yes. Wow.
It's a powerful foreword,
and
too.
It's a beautiful book. It's her whole story. It has colorful pictures of Lizzy. So you can get it on Amazon, but you can also get it at Plume here in Columbia, at American Shoe, at Tin Roof, some local, I always want to support local businesses, and then South Bank in Jefferson City.
Lizzy's Walk of Faith.org. And you could sign up for our 5K walk, run. A lot of people like that walk part. Dude, we have more walkers than runners. I'm serious. Hey, but it's October 4th. And so if you do come and you do sign up, hey, come up to us on the day of the event. Said, man, I was listening to the podcast. But
that's our biggest event that we raise money for the foundation, and the money goes to St. Jude. It goes to the foundation, and then we help other organizations and families. And like John mentioned, since Lizzy has passed away, we've given close to $700,000 to families, research, and awareness. And so that's an honor, and we couldn't do it without generous people. And we're humbled. I told John, I don't ever want to beg for money. So as long as God is in this and he opens doors, and he has been faithful to open doors for us, and people see the need, they understand what we're trying to do and the mission that we're trying to accomplish. And as long as God is with us to do that, we'll continue doing this journey.
That's good.
Well, guys, we are grateful for the time today, and this has been a blessing for my heart. I know for Angie's too. And we look forward to getting to know you guys even better.
Definitely.
For everybody who listened today, we hope that you have a wonderful week, and God bless.
Thank you for listening to Blended Blessed and Always a Mess. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and at blendedblessedalwaysamess.com.
Reach out to us on any of our social channels. We would love to hear from you. Have a great week.